Okay, here we go. Here's the walkthrough for New York Comic Con 2022 Artist Alley. I'm recording this on New Year's Eve. I hope everyone had a good holiday. Mine was pretty uneventful. I went and watched a movie and chilled out. Around Christmas time, I just hung out with the family. It was pretty relaxing. I tend to take a lot more of my vacation time at the end of the year. If I had more time, I would have tried to travel outside the country, but with all the flight cancellations that happened, and I guess I'm lucky, I probably didn't get caught up in all of that. But in February, if I can, I'll see if I can make it to Japan. I really like to go back to Narita for that statue show, Wonderfest. I went in 2019. Oh man, that was so awesome. I just loved the way that had that set up. 2 big buildings. One was primarily all licensed figures and statues, along with a lot of anime stuff. And then the other building was all unlicensed stuff like garage kits and just wild avant-garde art. Man, it was so fun. And to top it all off, when I went in 2019, I participated in a sort of scavenger hunt. And the odds were on my side because not a lot of people participated. But I won a giant, beautiful statue from Figurama, a Hunter Hex Hunter statue, Netero vs. Miriam. And I just had to pay the shipping on that later when it came out. That was really, really cool. But if I can get out to Thailand and Japan in February, I'll definitely do so. If I do, then, if I do any events or hit up any cool stores, I'll do a video roll of it and post it up on here with some comments. But time and money, I don't know if it'll be worth it. One reason I definitely want to go to Thailand is there's a really good painter, and she's painting a couple Chinese statues for me. There's this really cool artist who does these beautiful busts. So for the cost that it would cost me to ship them back to me, I may as well just go to Thailand and just pick them up and bring them back with me as checked luggage. So also, I know I mentioned it 100 times before, just to be able to eat food in Thailand, I think it would be amazing. I'll try to talk a little bit about a few artists as I walk by here, if I highlighted them or if I remember something about them. If I forgot something about somebody, I apologize, but I'll post a bunch of reference information and contact information in the description. So if there's anybody who has a question about a certain artist, let me know. It did take me a little longer to finish this video because I didn't have all the artist information and booth information. In a lot of cases, I had to screen capture art and then reverse image look up who the artist was. So yeah, I apologize for that. So the first artist coming up here is Jay Lee. He became pretty prominent in 1992 for his Namor the Submariner comic for Marvel. And just look at his art. It's really, really cool. He had a exclusive Some Things Killing the Children cover here. But yeah, you could see his art right here. It's really, really good. But yeah, iconic guy. He, along with his wife, who's a colorist, June Chung, they did a Transformers G.I. Joe crossover that takes place in an alternate World War II. Oh my God, I gotta hunt that down. I really, really want to read that. I love Transformers and G.I. Joe are probably my 2 favorite IPs from my childhood. This is Yale Stewart. He's got pretty cute comics over here. Check them out. I took a second pass and read some of them. They're really funny. But on this first walkthrough, I didn't stop long enough. But yeah, what happened to me on the holiday break? Christmas was pretty chill. Oh, at work, this is Christmas related, I guess. I'm not Christian, I'm atheist. Someone approached me at work and they asked me if I was a Christian, and I responded, no, I'm an atheist. In reality, I should have probably said I'm a humanist, there's this 11-year-old girl, Elle Harris, and she wrote this book called Elle Harris, the Humanist, which basically just almost like for kids. It's like a kid's book, but she's brilliant. She wrote it with her dad, and it just describes a humanist as someone who tries to make the world better without sort of being involved with religion. And they subscribe to what's known as the Platinum Rule. So the Platinum Rule would be treat others how they would want them to themselves be treated, rather than the Golden Rule, which is how you want to be treated. But so yeah, he said, are you Christian? And I said, no, I'm atheist. And I said, are you asking because I have holiday decorations up in my office? I have like, like wreaths and, stuff from Michael's, and like trees with lights and stuff, and bells and stuff. I guess I like the aesthetic of some of that pagan stuff, sort of celebrating, maybe like the way Romans celebrated Saturnalia with feasting, and if you tell by my weight increase over the holidays, by feasting and sort of decorating with pine trees and candles and lights and just sort of celebrating the return of the sun. That would be S-U-N, sun, not S-O-N. And the pine trees sort of growing despite all of the lack of sunlight and heat, the pine trees sort of coming through and persevering, and it's just kind of like a celebration of just life and rebirth, I guess. I'm just always amazed by nature itself in general. But so I said, no, are you asking because of the decorations in my office? And he was like, no, just in general. Then he went on to say, actually, I'm very religious. I sat down and I started to read the scriptures and the Bible and the Testament, and I had to decide whether it was real or not real. And the minute I heard him say that, my whole body like tensed. I guess I could just feel my Kegel muscles just tensing up. But yeah, so I was like, okay, here we go. Here comes the conversion talk, the evangelical. I hadn't hit my quota for people trying to convert me. So I just kind of put my head down and just let him sort of finish his spiel. So he went on and said, I sat down and I had to decide whether it was real or not real. And I read through it and I was like, yeah, it's definitely real. And my wife and I were really into it. And, we actually even have a YouTube channel where we talk about this stuff and we really get into it. And I was like, oh, yeah? And he's like, yeah. And actually, my wife and I, he said, think that a lot of the world's problems are caused by evil spirits and spirits, bad things in their heads. And he took a beat there, and then he said, do you know what an exorcism is? That's where my eyes got wide. And then I said, yeah, I do. He said, yeah, actually, my wife and I perform exorcisms on our YouTube channel. And he proceeded to say, let me write down my channel name here for you. You could check it out. Check it out. So I just quietly took that post-it note. I still have it. I haven't, taken the time to look at that, but it'll be interesting. Here's Enid Bala. He's a Mexican comic artist. He worked on Hawkeye, Black Panther, Wild Cards, a drawing of the three. There he is working on a sketch of Domino. But yeah, pretty talented guy there. So yeah. But yeah, good times. I wish him all the luck. Amen. If you're spiritual, all the more power to you. If it gives you comfort, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm sure it serves a lot of good purpose for a lot of people. Here's Fernanda Suarez. She's from Chile. I first found out about her not through Comic-Con, but I was really into board games for a while, and especially card games. And for a while, I was browsing these Kickstarters for card games that were simulating fighting games. And there was this one really cool card game called Ashes, Rise of the Phoenixborn. And when I saw the art on it, I was like, oh my God, this art's amazing. And I had to look this artist up. And she also did artwork for Pathfinder. But when I found her on Facebook, she had this really cool series of modern princesses and zodiacs, but she's really cool. This is Bryce Kho Draws, and his partner Lai makes. They do really, really cool artwork. I don't even know what that style is, but they cram so much detail into their art, and they're based out of Pasadena, California, but their stuff is really, really cool. But yeah, check Bryce Kho. If you're into Pokemon, you're into that Studio Ghibli aesthetic, you will not be disappointed. He's got some really cool stuff. So yeah, the other thing I noticed too was browsing the news. God, there are so many good people that passed away. I guess maybe I'm just more aware of people passing away because I'm getting older. I'm getting close to 50, and a lot of the names resonate a lot more. But just as an example, Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, Kevin Conroy, George Perez, Neal Adams, comic greats, Nichelle Nichols from Star Trek, James Caan, Ray Liotta, William Hurt. Who else? Bob Saget, Gilbert Gottfried. Oh yeah, speaking of Bob Saget, man, Norm Macdonald's passing really, really hit me hard. Pele, Albert Pune, who did Cyborg back in the day. What a terribly awful good movie back from the 80s. Ivan Reitman, Coolio, Sidney Poitier. But yeah, I mean, I guess like a way I cope sometimes is just looking up old clips or just remembering old stories. I remember Gilbert Gottfried. When I went to Vegas, it might have been the second time I went to Vegas. I was at the Hard Rock Cafe, which is now I guess called Virgin Hotels. But they had this House of Blues, and during breakfast time, Gilbert just did a comedy show out on the show floor outside on the entrance. So really anyone walking by could listen to it. They had sort of like roped off with like a velvet rope the area you're supposed to sit in. But it was just kind of a funny show. Oh, this is Ben Bishop. He's got a really cool TMNT Ronin cover there. And I think I paused on this aggregate comic, which is sort of like a choose your own adventure. They call it the world's first split decision comic, but it made me think of like choose your own adventure. God, I remember the first choose your own adventure books I probably read were You Are a Shark and Mystery of Chimney Rock by that guy Edward Packard, and that takes me back. But yeah, so I remember Gilbert. Going back to what I was saying before, Gilbert was doing this comedy show outside on the show floor, and it was the worst time and the worst venue to do a comedy show. It was like 10 in the morning, right around breakfast time. They had sort of an open buffet on the side, so you can grab like McGriddles and eggs and bacon and whatever. And it was a Sunday morning, so I think they had like some kind of thing where slots, there were all these 50-cent slot machines, so there were all of these senior elderly people, and I would say like a conservative guess is that 60% of them were on motorized wheelchairs. And Gilbert, like, none of his material was hitting. I think they expected him to do like stuff from the Cosby Show, or, man, this was way back in like the 90s. But I can't remember if he was known for Aladdin then, but he wasn't doing any mainstream stuff. He was doing sort of very edgy and kind of borderline, like, sort of just like dirty comedy, but without the language, just like a lot of innuendos. And he was losing the audience big time. But I think he just like doubled down and decided to go like he wanted to see if he could just walk them out. And he started leaning into this real blasphemous stuff about Jesus being up on the cross and, complaining and sort of mocking his persecutors. And I wouldn't say he walked the audience, because the majority audience was in motorized chairs. He sort of rolled that audience out. And because the entrance to this velvet rope area was so narrow, it ended up causing a traffic jam with people trying to get out, and they couldn't get out. But I just remember laughing. I was like the one person laughing during the entire set. But yeah, it was almost like a very Andy Kaufman-esque sort of meta experience. But yeah, that was Gilbert was great. But yeah, just coping and watching like Norm Macdonald destroyed during interviews. There's like a video series called Norm Saves the Interview, where his legendary appearances on Conan. I actually found a torrent of all of his old shows that are no longer available from his old YouTube channel. So I've just been making my way through those. Man, those are just such comedy gold. Yeah, good times. But there were just it's life is fragile, I feel like I found meaning in life sort of trying to enjoy fun art, fun media, and I almost wish I could live 2 or 3 times my lifespan, because there's so many books, there's so many comics, there's so much music, there's just so much of this world that I haven't even seen, country-wise, land-wise, city-wise, food-wise, I haven't experienced. It's like there's this subreddit, I think it's called Shower Thoughts. I don't know if it was in the Shower Thoughts or the subreddit Jack Handy. Someone posted something like, we're meant to be barefoot and naked, eating cheese and drinking wine in the forest. What the fuck is the credit score? And yeah, that resonates with me. I do laugh at like what our existence is and how much of our time we spend focusing on our career and trying to make sure we don't go bankrupt in our old age or don't have a horrible quality of life when we retire. This is Nooligan. I'm going to mangle his name, but his name is Hainanu Saluke. He's based out of Sacramento, California, but his art's really interesting. He has that sort of noir punk style. He even got like a deal with DC to make figures based on his art, and he does commissions. He's got a really cool website with lots of fun, like the way he does collectibles and the way he sort of makes limited release prints is really, really interesting. But yeah, he does a lot. He takes commissions too. So here's Run DMC. And that's basically Joseph Simmons, Daryl McDaniels, and J Master J, Jason Mizell, who passed away. But yeah, this is Daryl Makes Comics. I guess he's been doing it for a while. They just wanted to sort of make comics that was set in the 80s with that kind of sort of aesthetic and sentiment. It's like a universe inspired in the 80s, and he didn't like try to make it about the band. He just kind of tried to make a really solid comic, and I think he succeeded. I think in an interview he said he didn't want to make a white superhero or a black superhero. He didn't want to use those labels. He wanted to create a character an entity that was reflective of New York City. And he's like, when I walk outside the door in the city, I see black, white, Puerto Rican, Asian, Latino, gay, straight, fat, skinny. I see it all. And he wanted his comic to reflect both young and older people who can break down those like walls of separation and walls of race, and those shouldn't be separating us. So yeah, you know, I like the style of it too, but it was just kind of cool to see pop icons who are so influential just hanging out and promoting like, you know, this art. I mean, I think he even referenced how he talked about drawing in his songs, and if he was actually drawing when he was a little kid, and he was actually getting decent at it. So if he hadn't gone into music, that's what his career would have been. But yeah, I definitely applaud him following his dream and, you know, getting some traction with that. That's really cool. Here's Alvaro Martinez Bueno. He's worked for DC Black Label. He's also worked for Marvel. I guess some stuff he's known for: Nice House on the Lake, House of Slaughter, Justice League Dark, Detective Comics. But yeah, his stuff was really cool. Scott's Collectibles has really, really good artists. And here's an example of a few that I know, that I follow. I love their art. Up first, Inhuyk Lee. He's from South Korea. So he's from Seoul. And he's a character designer. He's also an art teacher. He works for Marvel, DC, Image Comics. He churns out covers like Stephen King churns out books, but he's consistently solid. There's Kael Ngu. He's a freelance illustrator from Malaysia. And he started like initially doing card game illustrations and concept arts for local game studios. And he's super talented. He's worked for IW Publishing, Valiant Comics, Dynamite Comics, DC Comics, Marvel Comics, Image Comics, Boom Studios. But yeah, he's really cool. And Alan Quah, he's from Malaysia, and he's done like interiors and covers for books. He's worked for Marvel, DC, Lucasfilm, so many more. He's published over 200 covers in the last few years. Green Lantern, Nightwing, Dark Knight of Steel, Batman, Superman, Wolverine, Spider-Man. He's done Some Things Killing the Children, a fantastic comic book. He's currently working on concept art for Marvel and DC's like a statue series for Royal Selangor. Royal Selangor does these beautiful pewter statues. They're out of Malaysia, and some of their stuff is really, really fantastic. There's Pablo Villalobos. Some pretty cool covers by him. There's another guy, I couldn't see his name and I couldn't read that QRC code. I had to like image capture those images and then sort of reverse look it up. But he's got some cool covers. But yeah, Scott's Collectibles, they seem to have like a good stable of artists. They're always consistently got some amazing people there. I think, yeah. I'm trying to remember who else they have. I think Mike Mayhew might be either with them or Eastside Comics. but they do like fantastic work. They do a good job promoting their artists too. But yeah, I think those guys, I think it was Alan who had like a really great triptych of Carnage that was out there, and a good multiverse series. Kevin Eastman wasn't here when I walked by. He was there a lot earlier. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, man, it's so formative in the stuff that I was into back in the day. I remember when the first comic came out, and I was just blown away by how gritty it was. I wasn't into comics big time as a kid. I mean, I guess I was, but I would just read like whatever happened to be there at the bookstore when my mom had that restaurant in the mall adjacent to us. But I never really kind of kept up with comic news or what was popular. I would just grab random comics off the rack, but I never realized how much Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was just a homage. I don't know if you'd call it a parody or a satire, but it was a homage to Frank Miller's Daredevil. I think the Red Letter Media did a good video with Freddie Williams III about this. So, but just a couple things that they may not have mentioned. I mean, obviously, it's like back then, there's like this story. I don't know if it's true, but Eastman and Laird couldn't get like a comic made, or they kept getting told by Marvel that something had to, the only thing that would be successful is if it had mutants, teenagers, or ninjas. And so, like, you know, I think the prominent comics during that time were the X-Men comics, that like the Teen Titans. Daredevil was huge around that time. Cerebus, the Aardvark, was huge around that time. So they kind of took like a mix of all three. You know, you got the teenage, you know, with like from the Teen Titans. You got the mutants from X-Men. You got the ninjas from Daredevil, and then you got the anthropogenic, you know, leads from Cerebus. Cerebus, the Aardvark, was sort of almost like Conan the Barbarian in disguise, but with an Aardvark being like the main character. But it was so much of a homage or nod to Daredevil, even in the origin panel for how the Turtles end up becoming the Mutant Ninja Turtles with the mutagen. You can even see in the background Matt Murdock, this kid that's a blind kid, getting splashed in the eyes with the mutagen at the exact same time that the canister rolls into the sewer. And I think even in the Daredevil comics later on by Matt Wade, I think one of the times they redid the origin story for Matt Murdock, they had a kid in the background holding a small bag with turtles in it. That's kind of like a loop around reference back to TMNT. But yeah, I mean, in Daredevil, his mentor is called Stick, who has a big stick. And in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Splinter, the rat, has a Splinter is a small stick. Splinter is their mentor. Instead of the hand in Daredevil, it's the foot in TMNT. Even like Shredder's outfit, it's probably inspired by a villain in Daredevil called the Gladiator. It's so much, it's exactly the same. But I remember TMNT was so popular, inspired stuff like Street Sharks, Biker Mice from Mars. I remember playing Biker Mice from Mars on Super Nintendo. That was like a really fun battle racer. But yeah. It was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's overshadowed. It's eclipsed. It definitely eclipsed Daredevil in terms of popularity, for good or bad. Oh yeah, I was talking to this guy. I was asking him about the mark on his head. It wasn't exactly for Catholicism, but I'm always fascinated by people's spirituality and the rituals around it. But I can't remember the explanation he gave me, but he did thank me for asking him about it. But this guy's good, Brian Level. Yeah, Sozomaika, her Morrigan and Black Cat up there are really awesome. I was really impressed by some of her work there. She did a really good job. Oh, and here's Joyce Chin coming up. Her work on Vampirella is reminiscent of this famous artist, Alphonse Maria Musha. Her work's been compared to his paintings. Musha was like a Czech painter, an illustrator, and graphic artist living in Paris during the Art Nouveau period. He had this series of paintings, these 20 paintings that he did over 18 years, called a Slav epic, depicting the mythology and history of Czechs and other Slavic peoples. And her depiction, Joyce Chin's depictions of superheroes and warriors, she once said they've been grounded in her belief that costumes need to match the attitude of the characters wearing them. And right next to her booth was Arthur Adams' work, and that's her husband. He is very talented also. I think they're both amazing artists. Here's Peach Momoko. She's Japanese. She's really like, something about her art is really mesmerizing. I was lucky enough to actually meet her in person and talk to her in Singapore a few years ago. Her father attended photography school, and her grandfather was an oil painter, and her art's primarily inspired by several genres of Japanese cinema. More specifically, I guess the genres would be like horror, military type war movies, and pink films. And pink films are basically like erotic thrillers. But yeah, like she kind of has a way of making stuff very feminine, but also like empowering. She has a really cool series called X-Men Demon Days. Definitely check out her art. Her posters are fantastic. Here's Tran Nguyen. She was born in Can Tho, Vietnam. She's based out of Georgia in the US now. And she uses like colored pencils and acrylic on paper. And her stuff's very like dreamlike. It reminds me a lot of that movie, What Dreams May Come. And I might have mentioned this before, but a couple years back when she was at New York Comic Con, she had like these prints and this beautiful silk scarf that was for sale. And I actually ended up buying it because I wanted to hang it around the frame of her prints. But yeah, she's really, really talented. I like her stuff for sure. And she's super nice, very cool, and yeah, just it's interesting. I guess I have met some people that were maybe like they remind you of that adage, never meet your heroes because they're rude. But it's I always find like usually some of the most talented people that have every right to maybe be outlandish. I find them to be extremely accessible, approachable, open-hearted. Even if you're just, just admiring and not buying, they're just so gracious. Yeah, that's another aspect, I guess, of Comic-Con that I do enjoy, is seeing all this talent, but then like your interactions are very good for your faith in humanity. Everyone already has like a very positive attitude. Well, here's Jesse Hernandez, Urban Aztec. He does a lot of Aztec type busts and toys too. You can find them on sideshow.com. I like it when people bring like their culture into their art like this in such a. This kind of makes me think, like when you see like those neo-futuristic Japan or neo-futuristic Hong Kong that almost look like a neo-futuristic Mayan or Aztec take. But yeah, that was really cool stuff. Here's Joseph J.M. Dragunis. I never bought any of his prints, but I did buy his art book. He's had some successful Kickstarters. He's been doing art since 2012, but I'm probably going by his art really quickly or too quickly. But look him up. He's got a very distinctive, interesting style. Yeah, I like his stuff. Or here's Tracy Ching. She's got really great alternative movie posters. I really like her Spirited Away poster, but she's got stuff with Big Lebowski, just like a lot of different movies, and she has some interesting foil posters too. But I remember the first time I saw her was AwesomeCon a few years ago. Maybe one day I'll pick up one of her movie posters. Most likely that's Spirited Away. Yeah, I can't wait to travel again. Thailand, I'd really love to try food. Probably Thai food is my favorite food. I almost feel like if I had Thai food in Thailand, like all Thai food in the US moving forward would be ruined for me. I would, because going to Japan and having udon there and ramen there and all the different ramen in different cities and their different styles and soup curry, it's just everything since then feels like a pale imitation here. Unless maybe like I go to like a high-end restaurant where they imported a chef straight from Japan. Yeah, it's just but it would be awesome. I mean, never mind just the amazing vistas and scenery and beautiful water. I think Thailand has a lot to offer, even just culturally. If I do go back to Japan, in addition to hitting up that Wonderfest statue show in Narita, this time I definitely want to visit the southwest part of Japan. I went to Nikko last time, and I went up north to Sapporo and Otaru in Hokkaido. But this time I want to see maybe a little different parts of Japan. If I can even make it to Okinawa, that would be great. I probably need to lose a lot of weight just so I can like do a crane kick on the beach. Right now, if I try to do that, I'd probably do some internal damage and give myself a hernia. I'm just like a walking samosa right now. Yeah. But yeah, like I think here's Jonathan Wayshack coming up. I think I stop here and I look at some of his art. I mean, the stuff he has in his sketchbook is amazing. It's just, this guy is just so good. He's been doing this since 1996, but I think I leafed through some of his work over here. But this is one of the most talented artists on the show floor. If I had to rate drawing skill and imagination, I think he's probably in the top 3 in this entire art show floor. I went to his website. Everything sold out on his website. But if I could ever find a copy of his sketchbooks, like he has sort of these smaller sketchbooks, I would love to get them. But yeah, this guy, look at this. This is sick. This is just, it's unfair that he's this talented. But yeah, I think this guy, he must have put an enormous amount of time and talent into developing his craft, but he must have like some, like an X-Men, some amazing genetic component that lets him draw like this. But yeah, he's I could gush over his work all day long. Just beautiful. Sorry about the terrible camera work there. I kind of lost myself while I was looking at it. Yeah, this stuff reminds me of Heavy Metal, that magazine back in the day. That was pretty cool cosplay there. That lightsaber was nice. Oh, this is Gregory Maldonado. Here he was just talking about the camera. At first I thought he was saying, oh, please don't film. Here's a shot of my chubby face. But he has an indie comic called Shaolin Nun, and he's based out of the Bronx, and he teaches at the Bronx Rivers Art Center, BRAC. But yeah, good guy. Check him out. Very nice guy. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like the countries I've been to. I've been to Canada. I used to play hockey a lot, so I've been up to Canada quite a few times when we did well enough to get qualify for a tournament, or if I was just asked to sub as a goalie for a team that went up there. I've gone a few times. I actually have some cousins that live up there in the Toronto area, and I've been to Niagara Falls a couple times. I've never been to Mexico. Technically, I've been to Germany and London, but those were just layovers, like on the way and coming back to India. But yeah, when I came to America way back in 1980, we came on Pan Am Air. I remember I got a little Pan Am Air toy plane too. And I remember I was running up and down the aisle, and people were like giving me like candies and stuff like that. I hope I didn't annoy anybody. I was probably like 5 years old at the time. But we had a layover in Heathrow, and we landed in JFK, and it was snowing when I arrived, and my cousin's family came and picked me up. But yeah, it was that was a really cool time. Oh, this is Sasha Yosselani. She's based out of Brooklyn. She's a traditional medium illustrator and fine artist. In her bio, she says she has an interest in the human condition, the darkness of natures that rules us. She has a successful string of exhibitions, but her work is really ethereal. I liked it. It was really cool. It's interesting when you see somebody that's so off the beaten path and different in their style, or especially like someone who's like a successful professional, painter, and then like their stuff stands out in such contrast to everything else, especially when it's original IP. This is Serafleur and Daniel Kamarudin. They were sharing a booth here. I think she is from Manila, Philippines, and he's from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. But their art's really cool. There's a lot of video game stuff, but their prints were really, really good. It was like leafing through some of their stuff, or I was just having my camera trained on it while someone leafed through a bunch of their prints here. But yeah, these guys, they're really, really fantastic. I liked how vibrant some of their prints were. It just really jumped off the page. That's another place I'd love to go, is the Philippines. I'm really into designer toys, and I've been getting more and more into Filipino food. I have a couple of Filipino friends. I would say the food that I've had at my friend's house is much better than any Filipino restaurant, but there aren't really like high-end Filipino restaurants around where I am, or if they are, I haven't really found them. But the other one, Daniel's from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and a good friend of mine, Juan, lives in Malaysia. The closest I got was Singapore, but if I ever make it back to Singapore, I'm gonna drive up, get my international driver's license, and drive up to Malaysia. Malaysia and Singapore, it reminds me of the Redskins and the Baltimore Ravens. There's like this rivalry between them, but only one side is aware of the rivalry. So like only Baltimore is aware that there's a rivalry. Washington doesn't care. Or actually, it's not even the Redskins, it's the Commanders now. And Malaysia and Singapore is the same way. Malaysia just gets upset because Singapore seems to co-opt some of their foods and desserts and stuff like that, and just assumes as if they belong to them. And Malaysian people just go insane. But yeah, I would love to actually go to Malaysia. I think I have an open invitation with my friend Juan if I ever go there. It would be kind of cool to visit that country. I'm sure it would be super affordable too, unlike Singapore. Singapore, the bills rack up very, very quickly. But yeah, I went to. So I guess I wouldn't count Heathrow, England, because that was a layover when I was a kid, and then I can't count Germany, although I wanted to go. But I had a layover in Frankfurt when I went to India way back in like 1991. I was like a teenager when I went to India, and yeah, I don't know. I didn't really. In 91, I think Die Hard 2 came out in the theaters. I was just into American culture at the time. I didn't really want to go when I went, but my mom insisted because my grandfather, I think, was very. He was he was in his 90s, and my mom wasn't sure when we might see him again. I don't think he was in the greatest of health, but she wanted me to meet him for sure. So yeah, I went, and we went for almost like 2 months. We primarily stayed in New Delhi, and we after a few weeks we went down to this city called Rishikesh, which I think translates to the city of the saints, because my mom wanted me to take us to this temple where she sort of prayed for my good health and misogynistically wanted her first child to be a son. Yeah, so the chosen one, me, I was born. And that temple, that was really amazing. Like to get to it, we had to cross this really long bridge. I wouldn't call it like Raiders of the Lost Ark bridge, but it was this bridge over this body of water, this river. But the drop must have been hundreds of feet. The river looked so small down below, but it wasn't a narrow bridge. It was a pretty wide, almost like the equivalent of like a 5-lane highway, paved, but it was all held together by wires and a support structure. But it was so weird because imagine like walking down a major highway that's suspended in midair with wires, but the whole highway is swaying back and forth, left and right. It was surreal, but it was very, very beautiful. Just where this temple was out in the middle of the jungle, it was just really, really fascinating. But the one thing I do remember is when I was there, I didn't really enjoy myself because I was just like an angry teenager. And on top of it, you know, the first 3 or 4 weeks that we were there, we didn't go anywhere. My mom and my mom's sister pretty much went shopping every day. Me and my cousin, we were not interested in that. And I think like, yeah, so we just ended up staying in the house where my grandparents and my uncles lived all together. It was like this 3-story house that was just all concrete with no windows. It was just these cutouts. There was no need, but because everything's very concrete everywhere, there's like no wood whatsoever. That thing was built like a iron fortress. It was like the fortress of Dragonstone. But to pass the time, my cousin had brought a copy of this board game called Blood Bowl, which is sort of like football with Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't know, he had like this super high developed all-star team, and I was trying to roll like a competing team, and I was just getting destroyed every minute. And I don't know, we had Atari 2600 to play with, which was a huge step back because I was like used to playing probably Super Nintendo by then. And we had a box full of VHS tapes to pass the time. And there were some amazing movies in it, like Jackie Chan's Police Story series, Rawhead Rex. But the tape that the VCR player that we had wasn't the right speed. It was like a European VCR, so everything played at the wrong speed. But somehow we enjoyed it. But I just remembered it was with the heat index, it felt like 120 some degrees. But I had enough. I think like the heat was baking my head. I do recall that I was just recalling how insane I felt I was going. As an example, this guy, Michael Wernke, I have to take a minute and just the paper that he did these sort of cool, cute drawings on, it makes me think of creepy paper from What We Do in the Shadows. But I love this paper that he drew this stuff on. It's very cool. But he has this cool book, Omega's Last Battle, also. Yeah, his stuff was really cool. So yeah, I remember that we didn't really have beds to sleep on. We had these sort of knit mattresses. They called them mungies. So they were just sort of like these soft woven pads that you slept on. And they breathed, but they were kind of uncomfortable unless you laid a blanket on top of them. But I recall just laying down on one of those mungies and just baking in the heat. And I couldn't even get like more than a couple hours sleep because I was dehydrating so quickly in the heat. I had to wake up every once in a while and just take drinks of water. One day, it was probably noon, and the heat was so overwhelming. It made you drowsy. But I was sleeping and I was having a dream that my heart was beating out of my chest. And I woke up with a start, and I looked down at my shirt, and I was just drenched in sweat, and my shirt right in the middle, it was moving up and down, almost like a cartoon character, like when their heart jumps out of their chest, like when a cartoon character falls in love and their heart jumps out of their chest, and his heart shape is like sticking out. I just felt like I looked down and I saw like maybe it was more accurate to describe. It was like in Aliens with the chest burster scene, but my shirt in my chest was moving up and down. I like took my hand and I put it down on the front, through the front of the neck of my shirt, and I felt something, and I pulled out what was a giant praying mantis. It was just chilling under my shirt, just for like shits and giggles. I guess maybe I was trying to get some shade from the heat or something. I looked at it, it looked at me, and I just kind of tossed it to the side and went back to sleep. But yeah, I think in that time, because I was going crazy from the heat, not having fun playing games, shitty Atari 2600 games, or getting destroyed on board games by my cousin, who was like a idiot savant at this football board game, Blood Bowl. I started bonding with this kid. So in a weird way, it's interesting culturally what happens in different countries. My family had this house, and they ran like a textile business and real estate business, but they were rich enough to have staff. Basically, you would call them servants. I wouldn't even call them staff. This wasn't like Downton Abbey. It's almost like basically slave labor. I'm sure they were getting paid less than $1 a day, maybe 50 cents a day. But they had like this staff of people to help cook and clean this house. It wasn't a super large house, but they could afford it because that labor was dirt cheap. And one of the kids that was a servant, he was 7 years old, dark-skinned kid with like almost like a shaved head. His name was Ramu, and the top floor of the house was sort of like a widow's walk. It was like a roof that you could just walk out onto, and so yeah, I just ended up talking to him in Hindi. That's one thing I never forgot. I forgot how to read and write in it, but I could speak it I would say semi-fluently. And he and I started bonding, and he would start showing me around like the town, and show me like he would like lead me to these really cool places. Like he would know like the local events that were going on. For example, there was like this sort of circus. It was like mostly acrobats and contortionists, and he like took me to it. It was really fascinating and interesting to watch. And he took me to get like pan, which is almost like a chewing tobacco treat. It can be sweet, it can be bitter. I remember throwing up from that. Oh, here's by the way, I'll stop for a second. Here's Naomi Van Doren. I first found out about her through Gen Con. She was there. She actually grew up in the Spice Islands of Indonesia, and she really began pursuing illustrating after she moved to Japan in 2013. And she's working on a trilogy of novels. There's one of them, Naya and the Fox Dragon. But she's got really cool stuff. And here's Daniel Savemin. I'm probably screwing up his name, but he does really, really cool stuff. He's been doing professional art for 15 years. He's got a couple comics. Octobaby's one of them. ADHD Man is another one of them. He does like these Cronenberg-esque-ish style. It reminds me of like Aeon Flux and Liquid TV back on MTV back in the day. And kind of like the comics that were in heavy metal back in the day. But yeah, really talented guy. I think he deals with a little bit of anxiety personally, and I can totally relate to that. But amazing art comes out of that. So anyway, going back to Ramu. So yeah, he and I started to bond and hang out, and we would just sort of pal around for a couple of weeks. And I was actually kind of sad when we left to go to Rishikesh. I knew we'd be down there for at least a week, visiting my cousin down there and also going to that temple. But while we were there, Ramu let in what I can only describe as accomplices into my grandmother's home, and they robbed anything that wasn't bolted down that was valuable, they took, if my memory serves right. So when we got back, it was weird. It was like this weird thing where I know like my family and some other, like my cousins had seen me palling around with this kid, and but no one ever asked me, did I know that he was planning that? Of course, we never saw that kid again. And, I was conflicted. On one hand, I was just like, he's a thief. But on the other hand, I was just like, good for him. Get what you can, my man. So yeah, I don't know. It was a very awkward scenario after that, where no one really brought it up to me, and I never really talked about it. But it was, I wonder if he ever thrived and survived, or whatever happened with him. But yeah. Yeah, he's probably I don't know. I don't think his life ended up like Slumdog Millionaire. But I hope if he's out there, he's doing well, and he's not like I hope he flourished. and there's like a quote: every great wealth is usually built on initially some crime. So maybe he turned it around and is doing good for people. But I would love to go back to India sometime. That country is so vast. I really need to do some research. Years ago, Jeremy Piven the actor who was he's been in so many things. A really funny guy. He did this documentary called Journey of a Lifetime, where he kind of traveled, from northern India to southern India. I can't remember if he started from the south and worked his way north or vice versa, but it was just such a fascinating documentary and so eye-opening as to how much of that country I don't know. By the way, this is Snyder and Capullo and Jock. Oh man, those guys, they've done so much amazing stuff. But especially, I'm on a more modern sense, Dark Knight Metal and Batman Who Laughs. Those sort of just rejuvenated those comics for me big time. I can't thank them enough for creating them. Yeah. And Ryan Parrott, yeah. Saw a lot of very talented people here. But passed by Frank Cho. Frank Cho, actually, he was a comic book artist at the University of Maryland, where I went to school. He did comics for our local college paper called the Diamondback, and he had this comic called University Squared. He drew like a strip also called Everything But the Kitchen Sink, I think. But he did that for the PG Community College. There was a newspaper called The Owl. And he grew up in Beltsville, Maryland. That's where like my parents worked, and they still work to this day. I grew up nearby in Greenbelt, and his parents weren't like super supportive of his interest in art, but he eventually made his way from PG Community College, and he transferred to the University of Maryland, and he went to nursing school. That was his parents' idea, but he graduated with a bachelor's in nursing in '96. But he found like a lot of success with that stuff. But I remember his comic, which was reminiscent of Bloom County in its style, at least its art style. So I never missed it. I especially look forward to it. But that comic, and then there was another comic called Igdoof. Those were like my two favorite comics at University of Maryland. But yeah, it's kind of cool. You feel a little, yeah, it's so stupid to feel like, oh, that guy went to the same school as me, or this famous person. Like, for example, Edward Norton went to high school in Columbia, Maryland, and I lived there for like 6.5 years or something like that. But it's so weird to say, oh yeah, I was at the same longitude and latitude as this famous person, so that's why he's on my team. It's ridiculous to think that, but whatever. But yeah, like after I visit a little bit more of Asia, I would love to go to South Korea. I would love to see Thailand and Malaysia and maybe even Indonesia. But and of course, if China wasn't having 3 million cases a day, then yeah, if the pandemic ever gets under control or technology catches up and finds a way for us to somehow survive it, or like the flu becomes, this COVID becomes like H1N1, where it's more contagious but less virulent, less deadly, then I would love to go to China. I would love to go to Shanghai and Shenzhen. I really love a lot of the art that comes out of there in the more progressive areas. I mentioned him before, but Serpent ZA, that guy Winston, he has an amazing documentary called Conquering China and another one called Conquering Northern China. But I would love to visit a lot of that country. I know there's severe problems with that government, and I do struggle with that sometimes, where when you separate the art from the artist, I think there's a lot of lovely people and culture still left in China, even though the majority of it sort of moved to Taiwan because of politics and had to evolve and flourish there outside of China. But I feel like there's a lot of wonderful, warm, and interesting things to see there. But that's another country. But after Asia, I'm probably glossing over a bunch of cool countries and amazing islands, but I guess I want to try to move on and start seeing a bit of Europe. I would love to go to Italy. I remember seeing, was it the second season of Master of None, where Aziz Ansari's character Dev is in Modena. It just looks so charming. And I love Italian food, of course. But there's so much cool history there. Everything from the Sistine Chapel to some of the underground, tunnels and churches. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of history. I think you could spend a lifetime exploring a lot of Europe. Actually, a friend of mine who was born in Greece, he's been trying to get his citizenship reinstated there, because if he sees an opportunity to retire as a Greek citizen, you can live anywhere in the Eurozone. So he does think about maybe going there. I think a lot of people who've traveled outside of the U.S. Do think a lot about retiring in a different country when they hit retirement age. I think the two most popular places are Costa Rica and Portugal, just because of the healthcare costs, but also because of the weather and the diversity and just the general living cost. There's a YouTube channel called Traveling with Kristen, and she lived in Costa Rica for a long time, and she's sort of a travel agent that helps people get settled and live as expats in many areas. And she became like a digital nomad and thought it would be such a good idea to sort of get the lay of the land, live in these places for a while, and give people tips and tricks on how to best adjust. But she came back to the US for a little while, and she made a comment about how the one thing that she forgot, or sort of had to, like in a shocking way, readapt to in the US, was how much everything is so consumerist and so go here all the time compared to other countries. She, like as an example, she was just overwhelmed. She almost forgot that when you go to a grocery store here, there's like so many different brands and flavors of anything, maybe even something like peanut butter. But if you go to another country, there'll just be like one brand of peanut butter at the grocery store. But the difference is that when you have like fruits and vegetables in those countries, maybe because of the way, and this is anecdotal, I shouldn't say this is a sweeping thing, but maybe because of the way agriculture is done or the way food is sourced, if you buy like a fruit or a vegetable in the grocery store overseas, yeah, you're not going to see like 500 different fruits and vegetables, but the ones that you do get are going to taste awesome because they're in season. You could go to the city and like get like something that's out of season, but yeah, it just won't taste right. But I do think about that. Sometimes I keep reading these stories about falling regulations, and my parents always talk about how they have difficulty picking out fresh produce that isn't spoiled or isn't covered with like mold or issues. And they even go to like great what's considered like mid high-end stores like Whole Foods, but they have trouble. But they do rave. They actually did a tour of some Scandinavian countries, and they came back raving about how good like the food and vegetables tasted. So yeah, I don't know. I do think about traveling. I feel like traveling definitely opens up your mind not only to like different surface things like food and history, but I think it like definitely has a major impact on your philosophy of life, your meaning, how people interact, how even you like your sense of humor, your sense of just sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Sense of zen or sense of fulfillment. Just traveling and interacting with stuff outside of your norms really gives you some great objectivity about life, and I think it's really rewarding. I almost wish that with all the taxes we pay, we should get like free vouchers to travel to other countries like once a year. And I almost feel like just like in some countries where military service is mandatory for like a year or something like that. I think South Korea is like that. I almost wish like it's mandatory to travel outside of this country. I think it would just be really enriching and wonderful for people's like sense of just opening their minds, opening their hearts, and a lot of that stuff. I am glad I did get to travel a bit in 2022. I did get out to the West Coast 4 times. Mostly I just went out for the conventions or for Halloween stuff. It was nice. I got to go to San Diego in July for San Diego Comic-Con. I went to Son of Monsterpalooza in Burbank in October. And around Halloween time, I also went to Knott's Berry Farm, which they call Not Scary Farm, but that was really fantastic. They went all out with, like the way they do all the decorations and the acting and, the players, and it's just, and those haunted houses, the production value was so sick. That was one of the, man, I wish I could have gone there as a kid. If I lived out there on the West Coast, I would have gone to that as often as possible. That was really cool. But also I went out again to Anaheim for Designer Con, and that was really fun too. Well, here's Ryan Otley coming up for Invincible. I finally finished that series, all 140 some comics. I read a lot of the side stories from the Invincible universe too. What a great comic. Really, touched upon things like fatherhood and what it means to be human and our place, and it kind of discusses the Fermi paradox in a way, but it had so many cool themes, and the art was interesting because there was a lot of different artists that came and did different parts of the run, but of course the animation is awesome. J.K. Simmons is ridiculously talented. I don't think he's done a bad thing. He was. I've been a fan of his since I saw him in Oz as Schillinger, as that Nazi asshole. He was such an amazing villain to hate. There's a show that I watched recently called Counterpart. It's only one season, and it only really needs to be one season. I think it was a one and done story. But it's on Amazon Prime. If you love mind-bending, spy, cloak and dagger stuff with some pure sci-fi elements, it's right up your alley. It's so cool. It's such a, I would say Counterpart is probably the best sci-fi thing I've seen since Predestination, or maybe a Hot Tub Time Machine. But definitely check that out. Really, really good stuff. But yeah, I really enjoyed Invincible. Right now, I'm trying to catch up on Berserk. I am so far back. I am like on volume, I would say volume 8 of 40 something. So yeah, I have a lot to go. But yeah, I do love that comic. I've watched the anime countless times, and I'm glad I'm finally finishing and catching up. It's just the art is it's just so good. It's so good. But yeah. Oh, this is John Jiang. Oh man, this is one of my favorite artists. I think for this show floor, for me personally, he's up there with John Wayshak as like probably one of the most amazing artists. Really underrated, or maybe not underrated. I'm sure he's won a bunch of awards. He's worked for ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, who did all the Star Wars stuff. He's worked on Pacific Rim, Rogue One. He's done stuff for TMNT, the movie. He's worked for DC Comics, Marvel Studios, Paramount, Disney, Lucasfilm, Legendary, Legos, Imagine FX, and Hasbro covers. Yeah, he's done Hasbro covers for East Side Comics. They're so sick. Aliens, G.I. Joe, and we passed by. We passed by his stuff way too fast, but his stuff is really, really, really cool. I can't say how much of a fan I am, and he's such a really like kind of one of those go the extra mile guys. When I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I was sort of overburdened with stuff, and he was gracious enough to let me leave a bunch of prints and a bunch of toys and things I bought just with him at his booth, and I was able to pick it up at the end of the convention. Really, really super nice guy, but so talented. And you should see his remarks. Like the way he does his sketches are sick, just sick. He's so talented. This is Alexander Icarino. He's based out of Texas, in Austin, and he does a lot of Star Wars and Marvel posters, and he does like work for AMC, the TV station, PlayStation, NBC, Rooster Teeth. He's got really, really cool posters. I have some of his Berserk posters and a Studio Ghibli Princess Mononoke poster, and he has these AP versions. I can't remember if they glow in the dark, but there's a big difference between the AP and the regular. A lot of his stuff is sold out now, but if you catch him at a convention, sometimes he has a couple copies of some of his older prints. But yeah, that guy is really, really, like, his posters really pop. But yeah. Yeah, so for New Year's Eve, I guess I went and watched a movie at the movie theater. Um, I guess I'm getting kind of curmudgeon-y in my old age. Everything annoys me at movie theaters nowadays. I'm probably going to cancel my movie theater subscription. I always end up finding people falling asleep, sitting next to me, snoring. I can't count the number of times I had to change my seats. Um, Yeah, I remember when the pandemic started, I went to see that horrible Rambo movie. It was like, it was so insulting to the audience and just borderline racist. But I ordered my ticket in the middle of the day, and I picked like a seat like close to the center on the first row. And at the time when you pick your reserved seat, you can see what other seats are taken. There was nobody else on the first row. And then after I got there and I sat down, this guy came over and like looked at my seat and looked at me, and he's like, "Why did you pick a seat next to me?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude?" He got very angry at me for picking a seat next to him, whereas I picked that seat before he did, because at the time that whole first row was empty. But the guy got really angry and then chose to pick a seat like one row further up down in the peanut gallery. But the whole time I heard him like just yelling angrily to himself. I was just like, God, I hope this guy isn't armed, and I hope he's not crazy like that one guy who shot the other guy over some popcorn. But I only had that thought because we're both watching Rambo. And when you have someone who's acting unhinged before Rambo, and by the way, the entire theater was pretty much empty. I think he was the fourth person to walk into the theater. But yeah, I just not a fan of going to the theaters. The one exception is that I have a huge love for 3D. I wish they would like bring back 3D technology for televisions again. I still have my 55-inch OLED that does 3D. They replaced the panel in it with a newer panel, but somehow it still does 3D. And I miss that. If I upgrade, if I get a projector, I'm going to try to research and see if there is a laser projector that does 3D. And I'd like to get the one that does the passive kind, like the way LG does it, instead of the active 3D glasses. But yeah, that's one thing I do love about movie theaters, is when they can provide that sort of extra feature. I mean, I love Dolby Atmos, but 3D will definitely bring me out, especially when the projector's bright enough. Oh, here's Austin Xinjianguo. He is another really cool artist. All the prints you see here are really cool, but his most amazing work has nothing to do with comics or Marvel. Like, all of these are sort of dragon takes on popular comic characters, but his stuff. So he was born in China in the Jilin province. He even like back in 2000 he won like this Shanghai Animation and Comic Competition prize for, like, he did this compilation called Chinese Ghost Stories, and in 2008, he was up and coming. He's actually like a very good artist, musician also. But in 2008, he was arrested and sent to prison in China because his art offended the government, the CCP. He had done drawings, but it's ridiculous to imprison anyone. It's hard to wrap your mind around it. But he did a Kickstarter for like this book about his experiences, and it's fascinating seeing his original artwork, especially a lot of it sort of through pictures tell stories about sort of some of the oppression he went through and saw. And looking at his work, it reminded me a lot of Kim Jung-gi, who passed away, and I'll talk about him in a little bit when we get to his booth. But yeah, he's a super talented guy. He did this drawings called these illustrating. He had illustrated parts of this book called The 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party, and he won like top honors at the 33rd annual Angoulême International Comics Festival for his work in Demigods and Semi-Devils. After he relocated in New York City, which I think is where he is now, he founded his new company, Flag Studios LLC, and he has a really cool art book that I bought too. But yeah, the guy's really, really, really talented guy. But yeah. This is Penelope Love Prince. I think her real name is Jackie He. She's based out of Chicago, and she kind of blends like these adorable creatures and like delicious treats and kind of like pop culture characters into like sort of this watercolor world. She's really cool. We also, a little earlier after Austin, I wanted to mention that guy Fion Ario. You might have seen my camera point down while I was talking to him. He is originally from San Juan, Puerto Rico. If you scroll back to the 1 hour, 28 minute, and 39 second point, you'll see Fion. And his stuff is almost like Alice in Wonderland meets LSD meets Ralph Bakshi. I have a couple of his prints and some coasters with like drink coasters with his artwork on it. He's based out of Weaverville, North Carolina, but he's a really, really cool artist. I was telling him that I had some of his artwork up in my office and people were asking me about it, but his stuff is really nice. But yeah, you know, I remember when the pandemic, like before the pandemic started, I had like a monthly subscription to AMC A-List where you can watch up to 3 movies a week. It doesn't matter if they're repeats or anything. But yeah, it's coming. I had canceled. They had suspended it for a year because of the pandemic, and then I canceled it for a while, or I think I put it into a deep suspension. But what broke me out of it was the movie Tenet by Christopher Nolan. I was so excited to see it, and I had gotten my COVID shot, I think, before it came out, or I can't remember if I did. But I went to go see it, and I hated it. I had a terrible time with that movie. I could not stand it because the audio mixing was so bad. I know this has been talked about a lot, but you could not make out the dialogue. Even Christopher Nolan was interviewed about it. I went and researched articles about this at the time because I was so mad at that movie. I was already starting to lose it with The Dark Knight Rises. Like we could not hear, like there's like a scene where like Gordon is talking to Batman and you can't make out a goddamn thing that they're saying. And Tenet was even worse because there's just like bullets and symbols clashing when there's important exposition that's supposed to happen. And, you know, for like an in-depth time travel movie, you want to make sure there's clarity, or even if you don't give a shit about explaining the mechanics of what's going on, at least let me hear the dialogue so I can at least get some character development and start identifying with the characters. But I mean, the acting wasn't really that great. Denzel Washington's son, who's like the protagonist, I think that's his name, the protagonist, he's not that great an actor. Maybe he'll get better, but he doesn't really have any charisma besides his like look or his smile. But Pattinson was trying his hardest to try to sell it. In a weird way, like at the end, when you, okay, I don't want to spoil anything, but you know, there's sort of an illusion that there's more to the Pattinson character and the protagonist character, and like all the stuff that they will go through or have gone through. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like, that's the movie I would prefer to see. I would prefer to see the movie of all the shit they did together than what we got. But I even rewatched that movie with subtitles, and so I understood it a little better. But I still felt let down by that movie. It was just hard to care about the characters. Everyone just seemed so devoid of life. It felt like I was watching like some NPCs or like a background story in The Matrix, or some fan fiction GTA created some crap. And I kept waiting for someone with like some real gravitas or someone who sort of awoke from the Matrix to show up. and tell an actual story or show actual emotion. I miss Nolan's like original stuff like Memento, and I really felt like that movie worked because, you know, as you go in reverse in Memento, like you don't have anything about that character in the beginning, right? But he's like a template, but you can kind of identify. It's like a kind of like the Bourne Identity. You can kind of identify the anxiety of not knowing who you are, but the movie takes you on a journey to reveal who the main character is. And as it goes along, you kind of realize the main character is not the hero. He's kind of a villain. And that's kind of like an interesting way to kind of do character development. And that was kind of a clever way. But in Tenet, they never give you any reveals about anyone's character, except maybe like Pattinson's character a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm just not a... Oh, Dustin's really cool here. Like I have that little box set of his Studio Ghibli foil bookmark prints. Those are really, really cool. But yeah, I just, yeah, I don't know. This is Greg Horn. This is another fantastic artist. I didn't spend enough time at his booth. This guy who was talking to him was raving about how different and lifelike and just how well Greg captures faces and anatomy and how lifelike, how full of life his drawings are. But yeah, Greg's like fantastic. He's got some really, really iconic covers. I can see why he's so popular. A Savage Land Rogue is really cool. There's Punchline, Zelda. Gwen, Venomized Gwen is cool. Oh, this is the Enhuyk Lee. He's like a contemporary illustrator from LA. And I first saw him at Designer Con. I really liked his sort of like surreal drawings about, you know, water and scuba type stuff. And he had some, you know, popular stuff based on Dark Souls and Elden Ring and stuff like that. But yeah, his stuff is really cool. I think he's might be a watercolor guy too, but his original stuff is really, really fantastic. But I was just catching up with him here. I didn't actually get anything new from him here. Kind of splurged a bit on prints of his at Designer Con a couple years ago. But yeah, really, really talented guy. In a second here, I'll rotate around and you'll see like a bunch of his prints. But yeah, definitely check him out. He's pretty cool. I like I find my art taste changing as I go on. You're getting sort of less involved with tangible, concrete stuff and getting more into like meta stuff. I tend to enjoy stuff that seems to be have a lot more meaning and is a lot more metaphorical. But you can see his art's very cool. This is Jillian Newland. This is a Canadian artist based out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he kind of combines, or she combines folk art and realism. I think it's a she. I think she's there. But yeah, these all are originally watercolor paints. And occasionally she finishes them digitally. That Cat Witch print's really cool. That's her right there. Very, very, very cool person. But yeah, I dug her stuff. But yeah, what was I talking about? Movies, right? Yeah, probably the worst movie experience I ever had was watching one of the Purge movies. I can't remember which one it was. I think they're all horrible after the first one. But I went to go see it with my friend who's a big Purge fan. I think he secretly just loves bad movies. But we went to go watch it at Regal Theaters, where they didn't have any assigned seating at the time, and he's usually late. But here's by the way, here's Kim Jong-il's booth. This was heartbreaking. He was on his way to New York Comic Con, and he had a layover in Paris. And while he was at that airport, he started feeling unwell, and his friend and business partner was with him, and he passed away from a heart attack. He had to be rushed to a hospital, but he didn't survive. Kim Jong-il was he was a South Korean illustrator and cartoonist, and what they call a manhwa artist. If Japanese has mangas, Korea they have manhwas, manhwa. It's like a term for Korean comics and print cartoons and detailed murals. But yeah, this guy, he could draw from memory. Times he would draw from strange perspectives, almost looks like fisheye lens. They called it curved linear. He primarily drew in ink, and he'd improvise while drawing, and he would do these large murals. I watched some live streams of him do it, and I was blown away by how much detail and how like cool his stuff looked. And you know, he initially did a like sort of a manga style, and he shifted into a more realistic style. But he's influenced so many people. There were so many artists you could see on that table. And you know, he was only 47. I'm 48. But yeah, like life is fragile, man. Life is so fragile. I sometimes wish, like, here's Celia Kale. She's a Boston-born and New York City-based illustrator and fashion designer and comic book penciler. She had a premiere comic there called Speed Pussy. I can't even say it with a straight face. Speed Pussy and the Pink Torpedo. And it's like about a drag racing heroine. But check out her comics. Really cool. But yeah, Celia Kale, she was really good. Okay, so getting back to that awesome movie experience. I think the movie might have been Purge Re-Election or Purge Election Year. But yeah, because my friend was late, there was no chance to get any reserved seats. We just ended up going with what was available. And it happened to be the seats in the very last row of the theater on the far right. So my friend got the aisle seat. I got the seat one in from that. And then there was an empty seat. And then after that was sitting a very attractive young woman. She looked like one of the most stunning models I've ever seen. So the previews start, and then her boyfriend shows up, and he's on his phone while he's trying to go by us. This guy, he looked like, the closest I can think of, he looked like Pookie from New Jack City, but he was like super ripped. So anyway, he sits down and he continues to talk on his phone throughout the previews. And, you know, the volume on the movie is pretty loud, so whoever's on the phone with him can't hear him. So he keeps like telling him, hey youngin, I'm at the movies, youngin. So I'm sitting there like, oh no, how long is this gonna go on? The guy continues to talk on this phone. They're not making any headway in the conversation because they can't hear each other. Eventually his girlfriend kind of like nudges him or kind of hits him a couple times, and he reluctantly hangs up the phone. Then as the movie starts, he pulls out his phone again and starts recording the movie. I look over at my friend and I'm shooting daggers into his eye, but my friend is like lost. He's loving the horrendous show we're gonna watch. He's not paying attention. But eventually the girlfriend gets upset with the boyfriend and grabs his arm again, and then he ends up sort of like kind of playfully pushing back against her, and then one thing led to another. Within I think 30 seconds they're making out, and they're making out super hot and heavy, and I'm sitting there like a cuckold just trying to bore lasers through my friend's face, like just to let him know that he's responsible for this miserable experience. I think maybe by the third scene, things got so hot and heavy between those two, they got up and left, thankfully. But that actually paled in comparison to how awful the rest of the movie was. Even Elizabeth Mitchell couldn't save it. But yeah, anyway, that's the worst movie experience. Thank you for coming along this virtual walking tour of the Artist Alley for New York Comic Con 2022 with me. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope 2022 was good for anyone watching this, and I hope next year, 2023, is even better. I really found a lot of joy and meaning getting a chance to look at all this amazing art. And all these artists, everything they create in a way is gonna help them live on long after they're gone. But yeah, thanks again and have a good one.